Hello and welcome to Lecture 5 in the Lean Masterclass series from the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation. This lecture will deal with Lean in a service environment. Many of us are used to the ideas of Lean in a manufacturing environment. It's easy to see Lean and to understand process when we're making things, when we can see actual product being produced. But most of our businesses do not just rely on manufacturing. Even manufacturing companies have back office, administration, purchasing, logistics, warehousing, quality, product development, innovation, all these other aspects, sales. All these other aspects of a business that go to make a total business. So the big issue for a business is to look at lean business and not at lean manufacturing. But as we start the journey to discuss lean in a service environment, we must ask ourselves why. Why would we think that the lean ideas are appropriate and useful and possible in a non-manufacturing environment? Firstly, lean helps people improve what they do. It helps people look at what they're doing and say, actually, it's possible for us to challenge how we've done it already and to say, can we do it better? So lean is about improvement, irrespective of the process. And if we move away from thinking about making things, but into the processes. In all service environment, we're taking either a piece of information or a service that a customer wants and bringing it to a conclusion where the customer is happy to pay for it. In the development process, we're taking an idea and asking, how can we move that idea into a real tangible product or service? So lean helps people improve what they do, what they're asked to do. The second key aspect, because service is becoming more and more a part of what we do in the modern society, there's more and more people involved in it, which means that it's becoming more and more important. What we've seen in the last 5 years certainly is a small number of enthusiasts begin to apply their thinking into the service environment, asking how can we look at a service environment and find ways to improve it. And the funny thing about that is it's been proven to work. At the class today, there are people who have applied the lean tools into pure service environments and found it to be hugely successful and helpful. So it's beginning to be shown to work. Some questions though about what defines what a good service is. And at the end of the day, the customer decides what a good service is. It's the same for a manufacturing organization. The customer is the arbiter of saying, is it good or is it bad? So how do we understand what the customer needs? It's based on their needs, their wants, and their perceptions. If a customer wants a service delivered to them, it's because they have a need or a want. And to understand the difference between a need and a want is fundamental to us understanding where the value is added or created, and also understanding how the customer may perceive the service that we give them. Because it's hard sometimes to differentiate objectively what's good or bad. But we must try to understand the perception of our customers in that. Very much in a service environment, people are at the base of the service delivery. There may be software they're working with, but in actual fact it's down to people's energies and outputs that define the service and define how the customer perceives the service that they've actually received. So we must understand people are at the core. But we also must understand if we want to improve a process in a service environment, we must understand the actual process. We must know what's going on, we must understand what makes it good or bad, and we must ask ourselves, do we understand how to improve it? Have we captured the essence of the process? A lot of this talk is based on research work from a gentleman called Professor Chris Voss from London Business School. I've had the pleasure to engage with Chris Voss for many, many years, over 20 years, where he first came across my radar many years ago with the 4-country study, 1994. And he found a correlation, a link between practice and performance, what people did and the level of performance they achieved. Subsequently, he applied the same thinking to understand what gave a good service, what gave a good outcome from a process into the service area. I'm working with colleagues in the United States, Professors Ross and Chase, they created what they call the International Service Study. Not somebody's opinion, not somebody's thinking, but actual hard research to identify what created a good service. And that formed the basis for what the lean service has evolved into. What was studied? They looked at the practices of individual organizations in a service environment. The basic comes down to what are they doing? And they identified there were certain outcomes, certain performance indicators to say, if you do the practices, what are you going to get? Some key findings from the study: a 5% increase in customer retention can lead to 100% improvement in business performance. So if you can do things a little bit better, the impact for your business is hugely different. If you do things badly, the impact for your business is hugely different. So how can we develop our processes to retain more customers to deliver to our bottom line for our service businesses? They studied why customers would be disloyal. And if you think about it, disloyal is not appropriate to a customer. Why they choose not to continue to do business with us, or why they choose to be disappointed in doing business with us, is a better way of describing it. How we have failed the customer, not they've been disloyal to us. But you understand the point being made. Poor service recovery, discontent sets in if it takes more than one person to resolve a problem. I have a problem, it takes 2 or 3 people to fix the problem, makes to a very discontented customer. If the resolution takes excessive time, if the timeline to fix the problem is too big, the customer just gets upset. They're naturally wanting a resolution, they're paid for the service, they don't want the resolution to go on and on and on, they want it fixed now. Natural things. But the customer perception of excellent service recovery is, if the recovery is excellent, the customer is as likely to purchase as if nothing had gone wrong. I had a problem with the service, I had a problem with what I got, I was well taken care of, I'm as happy to say it's great. So if we can give good service, the client is as happy to be happy as if they never had a problem in the first instance. So it can be a positive to the relationship. High customer satisfaction leads to high customer loyalty. And because service is so founded around employees and around our people, what they've also found was high employee satisfaction leads to high employee loyalty. So if our people are happy with the environment they're working in, they're more likely to stay with us. Why does that make a difference? If our business in a service environment is based on people, and we're constantly having to find new people, we're constantly having to train them, we're constantly having to go over the same mistakes again, as opposed to building a capability that is sustainable. In the research work from Voss and the team in the United States, they identified that best practice in service management leads to high service performance. If you can identify the things that are good and use them, you will get a proper performing service business, which in turn leads to superior business performance. It seems very obvious, but it's actually interesting and now proven academically that it's possible to find a way to seriously improve what you do to give bottom line business results. What are the practices? Established processes and procedures. What should we do? How should we do it? How do we write software? How do we assess samples in a laboratory? How do we develop back office administration to deal with the issues and the processes quickly and well? How can we deal with the need to rapidly change over from one product to the next product and ensuring that all the paperwork is in the right place to allow that to be done properly? How can we define our practices, what we do? And the performance then results in improved service quality and improved business results. Think about it. If we can identify what should be done and how it should be done and then do that in a service environment, there's less opportunity for people to make mistakes and things to be forgotten, which allows us to achieve better business results. There are some big issues when we apply lean into a service environment, and the biggest issue is seeing the service processes. If many of us go into our offices and we see our colleagues, everybody's sitting at a computer, everybody's busy, maybe they're doing Sudoku, Maybe they're on the internet checking out the football results, but everybody's busy on the computer. And it's very hard to see the flows, the natural flows that we would see in a manufacturing environment when we move into a service environment. Maybe they're all very busy adding real value to the business. Maybe they're all very busy developing new concepts or producing reports that will actually add value to the business. Maybe they're all very busy writing C++ code that will actually add real value to what's being done. But it doesn't matter if they're playing football or writing code, it's still very hard to see the processes. So one of the big issues in a service environment is being able to see it. To help to do that, we use a concept called process mapping. How can we actually identify the actual process steps? Can we define those process steps? Can we work with our people to identify what are known as the hurt points? The points that make it difficult for our people to do the work we've asked them to do. We talk about a lean journey. We talk about the concepts of driving performance and capability. We talk about building upon expertises, moving to the next level and the next level and the next level. The basic fundamental of process mapping and physical flow mapping in a service environment, of understanding what we ask our people to do and capturing it and sharing it and discussing it, and maybe asking ourselves, are all of these steps adding value or not adding value? Gives us a way to be able to see and to move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. In the service environment, as in the manufacturing environment, there are a number of specific wastes. These wastes are presented in what the Irish call the National Standards Association of Ireland, the Swift Guide for Lean, driving impediments using lean. In Ireland, we moved to create a national guide to what lean means in a manufacturing and a service environment, in innovation, in sales and production. We talked about the wastes, but we also moved to identify what are the differences between the wastes, between manufacturing and service environments. On the left-hand side, we have the Tim Woods waste, the transport, the inventory, etc. wastes, the standard waste that we know in lean. And we moved to look and to see what were those wastes in a manufacturing environment and in a service environment. In overproduction, we understand that in a manufacturing environment, but in a service environment, maybe producing documents that are not used. And maybe in writing code for features that the customer doesn't really want. And it's about looking and understanding these wastes in the different environments for a manufacturing and or a service environment and or a software environment, and actually challenging us to think, in our environment, what are those wastes? Because every one of those wastes just burns up time, burns up energy, does not add value to the business as it goes. To help people understand this, we talk about 5 words. I talk about 5 words. That lean is a journey. If we want to understand how to improve our processes in our services area, the first thing we have to do is go and look at the area. Engage with the people in the area. Say, we want to try to understand what's going on here. And the first step on that is we go to that area and look at that area with the people in the area. Not going to observe them, but going with them to look at what is going on. Why? So that they can see the actual processes. So they can actually see what those issues are. So they can actually then work with us to identify, to understand where the hurt points are, where the issues are. If we're talking about writing software, what are the things the software people have to do? What are the different steps and stages they have to go through to be able to produce a piece of legitimate software? Are we using a waterfall approach where we have a huge big specification that we work through for 6 months, then bring it to the customer and the customer then says, I don't really want all of those features? Or are we working in an agile way? Are we working in an extreme programming way? Are we working in a Kanban type of way where we're actually identifying minimum viable product, the least amount that will do for the job at the moment, delivering that quickly and checking, is this what you asked us for? Yes, no, yes, okay. What about the next piece? And breaking the big jobs down into small elements that can be managed visually so that the software team can see their progress towards a goal, so that the people in a service environment can see all the different steps involved to deliver value to the customer, and maybe challenge which of those add value and which of them we're just doing because we've always done it this way. The big issue in the service area, as I say, is being able to see the processes. And the biggest issue in seeing the processes is not going to look at them. Once we go to look at them, and once we go to apply the process steps or the physical analysis steps, then we get a chance to identify what the issues are, the hurt points are, and then we get a chance to make a difference. There's a very major German company that produced software. You're all aware of it. It flows through trees, SAP. A number of years ago, with the Costwine Circle Group, we visited and had a presentation from Porsche Consulting, who spoke about what they had done working with SAP to find 20% extra time for all their programmers. Why? Because they went and looked at what was being done by the programmers and identified waste, removed the waste, increased the opportunity to make it better, and actually delivered real value in a resource-constrained environment where it's difficult to get software people. So we must, in a service environment, go and try to understand, to look, to see, to understand. With our people, identifying the difficult places, giving them a chance to share with us what their problems are, and then try to make it better. Again and again and again, relentlessly. In the service environment, absolutely essential and helpful and powerful if we process map. If we actually don't say, what do you do, but write down what you do. A trick. And over the years, working with many companies, they say, our process is simple, it's all in the computer. We just do a workflow in the computer. And I would ask them, please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. Would you please go and process map? What do you mean? Get me copies of the paperwork, get me the screenshots, get me the little Excel spreadsheet that somebody has written to be able to track their own activities. Please put it all in one place now. Capture the realities, the current state, what is actually going on, not what we think is actually happening. So engaging with our people in the service processes, to capture what's actually happening. The same question of physical flow. As I say, we understand physical flow from a manufacturing environment, but we need to look at it in an office environment. Who is located with whom? Which function is located with which function? How can we find a way to optimize the location of people to deliver the real value? Check sheets, run charts, and teams, all simple tools. The same tools are used in service to capture the realities of the hurt points as we've used for many years in manufacturing. In the service environment, it's possibly even easier to use teams. Because we don't have a dirty, messy, noisy, awkward environment, we typically have reasonable office environments. So how can we create that environment where people choose to work together in that space? Moving on, talking about an office's environment, it's hard to see this. How can we do it? Because there's no products being made here. Yes, there's no product being made here, but ask yourself, are we adding value in the offices? Are we doing some work that has to be done in the offices? If we're not, we shouldn't have them. If we think we can run a manufacturing environment without having a purchasing department, okay, good. If we don't need design department, okay, good. But if we do need them, we need them. And they need to be efficient and effective as well. We don't see products being produced in a laboratory, but maybe if a test gets done and moves to a next test and moves from dry to wet to wet to dry to output stage, we have a process. And can we look at the process and understand that process and understand what is actually going on in the processes? Because in all of these back office, in all of these creatives, in all of these non-manufacturing areas, very many people are doing things. Very many people are doing things that need to be done for the business to be able to sustain itself, for the business to be able to continue, for the business to be able to create and add value. We'll be talking in one of the further lectures about lean in the innovation space, lean in the product development space. But these other parts of the business add value to the business, and we need to understand that and find ways to move forward. If we don't, We're just deciding to keep the wastes at the level they're currently at and not building our capabilities. Process mapping to me is the first and fundamental thing we need to do in a service environment. If we don't know what is going on, how can we be expected to make it better? We must understand the process. We must go to understand and see what the people are doing. We should try to understand what's making it right for them and not making it right. Can we capture the steps required to get the job done? My experience of 36 years tells me that what we think is happening is not always what is happening. What it says in the quality manual could differ significantly from the realities on the ground. And typically people are doing things to get the job done that the leadership don't really understand, or never really wanted to try to understand, or never took the time to engage with to understand. But our people are doing the things to get the job done. But if a fix was required to do something once, and we keep doing it for many years afterwards, but it's not required anymore, it's an additional step that adds waste, that reduces value, and burns up people's time. So if we don't know the process, how can we expect our people to deliver the process well or to maximize the benefit from the operation? In a logistics environment, maybe the materials are delivered in the wrong place, stacked in the wrong way, taken off the truck in the wrong way, put onto the truck in the wrong way. Little things we will never know unless we go to look and to see the process. The point about process mapping is it deals with the reality experienced by the people doing the job. Not the theoretical, but the actual experiences of the people. So if we can engage with them to know and to understand what they are doing and listen in an effort to improve it, we get a chance to improve the service environment. Big questions. What are you doing? How you are doing it? Practical ways to move it forward. Write down what you were doing. Detail it. Detail it. The level of detail will change from the first time you do a process map to the second, to the third, to the fourth time. Because people will begin to understand detail and that the value of an operation is often in the details. Capture the map and capture the samples of the paperwork. Please don't just go on, it's in the computer. Capture the physical examples to create a visualization for your people about what's involved. A small example, working with a company in Ireland, 7 members of the management team were to meet to bring in their process maps. 6 of them came, one with rolls of wallpaper, others with A0 sheets, flip chart sheets, others with a book of all the steps. One guy came in from his department to say, "We do our job well." Now imagine how the boss dealt with that. 6 members of the team decided to do an exercise, different levels of detail, but different levels of effort, but good. One guy says, "We do our jobs well." But suffice to say, the chief executive had a word with them. She said, "Did you not understand the problem? We explained the exercise to everybody, and you come in and disrespect your colleagues by saying, 'We do our jobs well, please go away.'" Straight away, he said, "Oh no, I'll go back and do it properly now." And she said to him, "No, you won't. You'll bring that to the meeting now, and you will embarrass yourself in front of everybody else." If we don't know the detail, if we don't try to capture it, how are we going to find a way to make it better? But your level of detail will evolve as your experience evolves. There's big issues between theoretical order entry process, simple steps, and the actual realities that go on when you map it physically. Where is the information going? Where is the paperwork going? Can we see it? Can we use the physical and process maps to create a visualization so that we have a chance to be able to say, "Whoa, is that what we're doing around here? Is that how we run this business?" The actual order entry process is slightly different to the theoretical one. You'll find there's an awful lot of waiting, an awful lot of transfers, an awful lot of waiting, transfers. And every one of those transfers are delays. Every one of those waitings is waste time. Every one of those times is waste value. Every one of those waits and loss of time and value is wasted people's energies. Every one of those is work that could have been done to add value to the business that wasn't. So how can we see that and visualize that for our people? Can we actually see the crossing over, the backwards, the forwards, the ins, the outs, the problems? As the French say, excuse me, my pronunciation is very poor, but les bêtises, the stupidities. Why are we doing it like that? If we see it, we can do something about it. Typically, we tend to organize our people into functional groups. All the accountants are in one space, all the engineers are in one place, all the guys are in the different areas. And I wonder about that. Number one is probably good traditional management in a traditional structure, get all the functional aspects together. But in the previous lecture on the 5 rings, I talked about the benefit of people engaging together. If we go from a traditional to an engaged process that's focused around the value we're trying to deliver, maybe we can find a better way to organize ourselves. Maybe we need to have somebody from accounts, finance, planning, production working in a group as opposed to in separate entities that are separated by their professions, that speak the secret language of the engineers, have the handshakes of the accountants, have the planning nods of the planning people. Right? Can we find ways to communicate that work for the full business as opposed to just keeping ourselves with our professional peers? A way to see the movements through a business is using a concept called swim lanes. Can we see the physical movement of material, information, paperwork from one area to another area? It's all about visualizing the steps and the stages in the process so that we can challenge ourselves and see what's adding value, what's not adding value. An example of order processing, an example of enhanced order processing. When we move away from challenging the status quo down to actually finding ways to improve it and finding ways to make it better and make it deliverable. One of the big issues I've often found in working with administration organizations is we are just snowed under. We have so much to do. I don't know if that's resonating with anybody in the room or on the internet, but we're too busy, we don't have time to look at this. Well, the reality of that is if you're spending a proportion of your time doing unnecessary or wasteful work or repetitive work that isn't important or just because of the way it was done, and if you don't improve it, guess what's going to happen next week? You'll do the same again. And the week after, you'll do the same again. And you will choose just to burn up your time over years. If we can map out the process in detail, we get the opportunity to find ways to improve. Please excuse the quality of the photograph. This is what's known in the world as a Keegan photograph. Poor quality, but for a reason. I mentioned about getting samples of the paperwork from computer-based systems. On the back wall behind the people, you'll notice that there are some elements of paperwork. Can you see the paperwork on the back wall? On the paperwork, that was the paperwork to produce one batch of a product. One batch. The company made more than one batch a week, let alone more than one batch a year. So they made many batches. And this was the paperwork for each batch. Immediately you'll notice there are lots of pages on the wall. And if you look at them, you'll see there seems to be yellow post-its on quite a few of those pages. The post-its referred to, we're either going to lose this paperwork, we're going to adjust this paper, we're going to change this paperwork. And of the pages presented to describe the process flow, 85% of those pages had a yellow post-it on it. But this organization had said, we don't need to see the process, it's in the computer. Please get it out. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, what are we going to do now to tackle that? Because if you can see the problem, you can do something about it. And that's the big challenge. The results. The paper trail was long. They moved to develop a new physical flow and not just a new process flow. They found they were going backwards and forwards on themselves and didn't need to. By reorganizing how they were arranged, they found ways to match the office staff to the flow, reduced the paper by 50% and took out lots of the non-value added steps. Funny thing about non-value added steps, who actually values non-value added steps? The answer to that one is every company that does non-value added steps obviously values them because you're paying for them. You have decided they are worth doing. You have decided that you will pay for all those non-value added. Why? Because you already do. And what that means is you're reducing your benefit to be gained from the business. You're giving away your profit or your potential for margin because you have decided they are worth doing. You have added value into non-value added. Most importantly, by reducing this work, the effort the people were involved in, they found time. They found time to be able to apply to other problems in the business by looking at their service administration areas of the business. We've talked in the earlier lectures about time being a key measure. Another key measure is this concept of added value, and I've just spoken about who understands non-value added and who values non-value added. Anybody who's doing non-value added has added value to their non-value added. But lead time reduction tackles both. If we can get the work done in a shorter space of time, we'll have less non-value added and we'll actually have more time available to do good things. There's a small example from many years ago, and it talked about small steps making a difference. And in the lean area, we talk about the word called Kaizen. And I apologize for not using lots of Japanese words in this series of lectures, but I choose not to on purpose. But one of the Japanese words many of us be familiar with is the word called Kaizen. Small steps for improvement, little things. And little things can make a big, big difference. Over the years, we've engaged with many different people, and one of the most memorable cases was in relation to Her Majesty's Customs and Excise in the United Kingdom, the British Taxation Department. A simple little example. The working day in the public service in England started at 9 o'clock and finished at 5 o'clock. Normal. We're talking about the tax office. At 9 o'clock, people came into the office. At 10 o'clock, they started opening the envelopes and taking the checks out of the envelope. This is back in the days when money was transferred by check. By 3 o'clock, the bank had closed. People went home at 1700 hours. The work of taking the checks out of the envelopes finished at 15:30. And they had nowhere to go because the bank was already closed. Net impact on Her Majesty's government? They worked it out because they hadn't got all the checks into the bank. It was worth about £10 million per year. Not a small amount of money. I know for some of you guys that's inconsequential, right? But for most people, losing 10 million for no reason is a big issue. Until they applied process mapping and visualization to this problem. And they realized they only started opening the envelopes because the postman delivered them at 9:45. And they said, what was the first question they asked? Would be, why did he deliver them at 9:45? And they asked the postman, excuse me, can I talk to you, Thomas? Why did you deliver at 9:45? And he says, because that's what I've always done. And they said, could you deliver them earlier? Well, he said, I could, but I never have. He said, if we asked you nicely, and if we gave you a cup of tea when you got here, could you deliver them at 9 o'clock? Or actually at 8:45. And Thomas said, yes, I will deliver them here at 8:45. It just means I don't go to somebody who doesn't need the envelopes quickly. I will go to the Prime Minister's office after you as opposed to before you. The difference ended up as being a 10 million positive to Her Majesty's Customs and Excise, purely because somebody applied the concept of asking time, money, and effort. The same thing. Can we see when our people are at work, when the workload is? Can we understand in a health environment, when should our people be there to help our patients or our clients do what needs to be done? When should we have the staff in? When do we not need as many staff? When can it be appropriate? right? How often are we doing waterfall projects or agile projects? Can we look at the realities that are going on, and can we ask, can we just challenge that and discuss and ask about that, see if it's possible to think, could we do it slightly differently? Apply the lean tools, process and physical, check sheet and run chart. How often does something go right or go wrong? Is it getting better or getting worse? £10 million was found by a group of enthusiasts by looking at the customs and excise. Not a big issue, not a big challenge. Can we find ways to group our people together, that we align the people who need to be in the process beside and close to each other? In this, once again, Keegan photograph, procurement, finance, design and production planning, all in the same area. So that if we want to produce a new product, do we have the parts? No, I'll get them in. Can we pay the supplier so that we can then have them in place? The designers, we want to put this beautiful piece of pink polka dot steel that can only be purchased in South America. Would you not use mild steel? Okay. Can we reduce the palette of the design people so that we can actually create sustainable products with creativity as opposed to just thousands upon thousands of individual parts, individual codes? Can we bring the people together so they're working as a team as opposed to working as individuals? In a sales operation, do we know who's buying what, when, what quantities, from which salespeople? We've had huge successes engaging with what we call world-class sales in Irish companies. Once again, looking at how are you selling, what are you selling, to whom, to when? How are you doing it? If we don't understand the questions for a given area, how are we going to move it forward? In administration group, who's being accurate? What types of interruptions occur? How frequently do they occur? When should we man up? When should we man down? When should we align ourselves, our resources, to deliver the value for the business, for the organization? Can we see that? Can we use the basics of a check sheet to be able to capture the facts that our processes are trying to tell us? Can we use the basis to be able to capture the issues our people are suffering, so that at a management level we can work with them to address them, to help develop them? Or do our people just keep constantly trying to fix the things, to address the BTs, to move forward? A check sheet for an administration process. Down one side for a receptionist, I was on the telephone, visitors, emails, queries, rework. Can we just get a view, a real view of what actually is going on in the process? Can we move it out of the computer into the real world that we can engage with, so that we can see the issues our people are having in the service environment? Now back to my father, the root of an awful lot of knowledge, for me at least, and for you as well, I'm sure, as you grew up. He made a comment to me years ago: there's no harm in letting people know what they've done and what they have to do. And in a manufacturing environment, it's easy for us to set targets and objectives. In a service environment, we think it's much harder. But I've run sales teams, I've run design organizations. The big question here is, if people don't know what we expect of them, how are we ever going to be positively happy that they got there? And if they don't know what's expected of them, how are they going to move to deliver on that? So it's about visualizing and let people engage and see what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll find further lectures in this series on the EU Japan Centre website, along with support materials to help you on your journey to deliver lean and competitiveness into your businesses. Thank you very much.